Picture this. You're standing in a packed subway car, bodies pressed against you from all sides. Or you're in a bustling shopping mall during the holidays, navigating through a sea of people. Or maybe you're at a concert, surrounded by thousands of strangers, and all you can think about is getting out. If crowded places fill you with dread, anxiety, or an overwhelming urge to escape, you're not alone. And contrary to what you might think, it's not always about being antisocial or introverted. The psychology behind why some people hate crowds is far more complex and fascinating than simple social preference. Today, we're exploring what's really happening in your brain and body when you're surrounded by too many people. Let's start with the obvious but often misunderstood factor: sensory overload. Your brain is constantly processing information from your environment. Sights, sounds, smells, physical sensations. In a crowded space, this sensory input doesn't just increase, it explodes. You're tracking dozens or even hundreds of moving bodies, filtering through layers of conversations, detecting various scents, feeling the heat of other people's bodies, and navigating constantly changing spatial dynamics. For some people, their brains process this information differently. Research suggests that individuals with sensory processing sensitivity, which affects about 20 to 30% of the population, have nervous systems that process sensory data more deeply and thoroughly. In a crowd, this means their brains are working overtime, analyzing every stimulus in high definition, while everyone else is operating on standard mode. This isn't a disorder or a weakness. It's a neurological difference. These individuals often notice subtleties others miss, but the trade-off is that overwhelming environments become genuinely painful to experience. Their dislike of crowds isn't dramatic or attention-seeking. It's their nervous system screaming for relief. Now let's talk about personal space and why violating it feels so viscerally wrong. Humans have what psychologists call a personal space bubble, an invisible boundary around our bodies that we consider our territory. The size of this bubble varies by culture, personality, and context, but when it's violated, especially repeatedly and unpredictably, it triggers a stress response. Studies using brain imaging have shown that when someone invades our personal space, areas of the brain associated with threat detection and discomfort light up. It's not just psychological discomfort. Your brain is genuinely registering these intrusions as potential threats. In crowds, your personal space is constantly being violated. You can't control who gets close to you, when they'll bump into you, or where you can move. This loss of control over your own physical boundaries creates what researchers call spatial stress. Your body remains in a state of low-level alert, never able to fully relax because the threat of intrusion is constant. For people who already have heightened sensitivity to personal space violations, whether due to past trauma, anxiety tendencies, or simply individual differences in comfort levels, crowds become psychological minefields. But there's another layer to this that's purely cognitive: the mental exhaustion of crowd navigation. Think about what your brain has to do in a crowded place. You're constantly calculating trajectories. Will that person turn left or right? Should I speed up or slow down to avoid a collision? Where's the nearest exit? Who's behind me? This isn't conscious thought. It's happening automatically, beneath your awareness, but it's still consuming cognitive resources. Researchers call this attentional load. In crowds, your attentional load skyrockets. You're tracking multiple moving objects, making split-second decisions, suppressing your startle reflex every time someone brushes past you, and maintaining spatial awareness in 360 degrees. It's mentally exhausting. Some people's brains handle this load efficiently. Others find it depleting. And if you're someone who already experiences anxiety, has attention difficulties, or tends toward hypervigilance, the cognitive demand of crowds can be overwhelming. By the time you leave, you're not just tired, you're cognitively drained. Now let's address the elephant in the room: anxiety and the fear of being trapped. For many people who hate crowds, there's an element of anxiety tied to escape routes and autonomy. Crowds represent a loss of control. You can't quickly leave if you need to. You can't control the pace of your movement. You're at the mercy of the crowd's flow. This can trigger what psychologists call entrapment anxiety. It's not necessarily full claustrophobia, though the two are related. It's the uncomfortable awareness that you're not free to exit easily, that you're dependent on the crowd moving or dispersing before you can reclaim your autonomy. For some, this connects to deeper fears about safety. Crowds make it harder to identify threats, harder to react quickly, harder to protect yourself. Your brain's threat detection system goes into overdrive, constantly scanning for danger in an environment where danger could come from anywhere. There's also something called de-individuation anxiety. In a crowd, you lose your sense of individual identity. You become part of a mass, anonymous and indistinct. For people with a strong need for autonomy and self-definition, this psychological merging into a crowd can feel deeply unsettling. And here's something many people don't realize: the emotional contagion effect. Emotions are contagious, and in crowds, this effect amplifies. If the crowd is anxious, rushed, or aggressive, you absorb those emotions even if you weren't feeling them before. Research has shown that we unconsciously mirror the emotional states of people around us. And in a crowd, you're being hit with emotional signals from hundreds of sources simultaneously. If you're someone who's already emotionally sensitive or empathetic, crowds can feel like emotional chaos. You're picking up on everyone's stress, frustration, excitement, or aggression, and your nervous system is responding to all of it. No wonder you feel drained afterward. So what does all this mean? If you hate crowded places, understand that your reaction is rooted in real, measurable, psychological and neurological processes. It's not weakness, antisocial behavior, or something you need to just get over. Your brain might process sensory information more deeply. Your personal space needs might be legitimately different. Your cognitive resources might be allocated differently. Your anxiety response might be more sensitive. None of these things are flaws. The good news? Understanding why crowds affect you the way they do can help you develop better coping strategies. Maybe it's noise-cancelling headphones to reduce sensory input. Maybe it's choosing off-peak times. Maybe it's giving yourself permission to leave when you need to without guilt. Maybe it's simply accepting that you're not broken for preferring smaller, more controlled environments. The world needs both types of people: those who thrive in crowds and those who thrive in quieter spaces. Your aversion to crowds doesn't make you less capable, less social, or less normal. It makes you human, with a unique nervous system that has its own preferences and limits. And that's not something to fix. That's something to understand, respect, and work with. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.